This is Dylan Moore with IridaTV coming to you today. It is Monday, August 22nd, 2022, and today I have in studio a man by the name of Cliff Moon, who is a congressional candidate for U.S. District 7 in Washington State, who has just made his way through the primary and is going on to the general election, and we wanted to get him in here because this is a pretty important seat because it's right smack dab in the middle of Seattle, and we got to get him on here to know what the heck is going on and what he plans on doing if he gets into the halls of Congress. So first of all, Cliff, thank you for taking the time to come in on the show today.
Well, thank you, Dylan. It's good to see you.
Yes. So the first thing I always got to ask someone who's running for office, what made you decide to get up one morning and say, I'm going to do this?
It was a choice. I was dissatisfied with what was going on in the greater Seattle area and what was coming out of Washington D.C. and I thought, gee, should I do this or not? And I got on the computer and it was Thursday, the last, you have till Friday to file, and I thought, oh,
I'm just gonna do it.
Wow, and bingo, you press enter and you're in. So that was it. It was a choice. It's something that I thought we should do. So
wait, let me get this straight. On the last 24 hours, you decided to throw your hat in the ring, and then you turned around and won the primary.
That's correct.
So I see a lot of planning went into that one. So you must have a message that's resonating with somebody because you beat out the others who I presume put a little more planning into it than what you just did. So what's walking into the halls of Congress, what would be the most important thing on your agenda?
Well, I'm a business owner, and I see inflation. It happens it's happening to our businesses. It's happening to others, and I thought we got to be able to do something about that. I'm a grandfather and a great-grandfather. I have children that are going into the school system, and the curriculums that are being projected. I'm not for that. I think it needs to go back to some basics. Mm-hmm. And crime. Wow, it's just. It seems like the criminals are the victims and the victims are the criminals. We got to turn that around. We need to, if you're going to create a crime, you need to pay the price for it. And so I thought, well, can I do that from Congress, and can I do it from the greater Seattle area? And so in my mind, I need to represent the district first. That's from Shoreline to Normandy Park. Mm-hmm. Second, I need to be able to represent the nation as a whole with the backdrop of what my district wants. And third, maybe globally. What decisions are made globally that I could impact as well? So that's the thing behind me.
I see.
I just made that choice to step into the ring.
Well, it's exciting that you did because, like I said, or like we just said, you're going on to the general. And then speaking of globally, before we turned on the cameras and before we turned on the recording, you're giving me a little bit of indication of your global experiences growing up, and someone looking at you might not be able to garner that. So do you mind going a little bit into your global experiences right from the beginning? Sure.
My dad was an engineer for the State Department. In today's terminology, he would be known as a water resource engineer. Mm-hmm. So in the early 50s, we moved to Afghanistan. We lived in a town just outside of Kandahar, and he was involved in irrigation projects. And then later on, we moved to Washington, D.C. for a short stint there. And then from that, we went into Iraq. That was in the mid 50s. Lived initially in Baghdad, and then Baghdad had a revolution and overturned the monarchy, and most of the expats fled fled the country or left the country, but we stayed, and we went up to a town called Soleimania, which is where the Kurds were, and that was proved to be maybe as dangerous as living in Baghdad. So we moved to Mosul, and we lived in Mosul for a couple of years, and that's outside the ancient town of Nineveh.
Really?
And it was you could see the ruins of Nineveh from my bedroom window.
Nineveh's the town of Gilgamesh, isn't it?
Yes. So then later in like 59, Mosul declared itself a separate state. There was that created some anxiety with my mom. She had been on the train machine gunned, and she saw some executions of the rebels and so forth. So we elected to leave, and we went to India. And India was under martial law, and my mom didn't like guns, so we went to Thailand. Snakes fell out of the trees at night onto the roofs of the houses, and my mom didn't like snakes either, so we ended up going to Cuba, and we lived in a town called Guantanamo. And same issue. My dad was involved in irrigation projects. They were going to build a couple of dams in the Oriente province, and he was involved in that. And one day, one of Castro's soldiers with
Wait, so is this before or after the Cuban Revolution? I'm sorry.
After the Cuban Revolution.
Okay, so wow, okay.
So one of Castro's soldiers, or a couple of soldiers, they had a Jeep with a machine gun mounted to the Jeep, drove around our house and shot the roof out, and my mom had it by then, so.
I'm sorry, there's so many questions. So there was guns over here, we got shot at, and we went over to this other country. Like, why didn't it occur to anybody to come back here?
I think that, I enjoyed.
Your dad wanted adventure. I understand that, but wow.
No, there's a sense of providing a service to these people groups that we were involved in. Mm-hmm. You're providing, water resources either through irrigation or electricity through dams, and my dad was interested in doing that. I do the same kind of things in my life now. So we moved on to the naval base, and I finished high school on a naval base. And
which one?
At Guantanamo.
Oh, okay.
At Guantanamo, and then I had enjoyed snorkeling and scuba diving and that kind of thing, and so I built a 2-man submarine as a science project my last year of high school. So even today, I still travel to the Central Asia, and I teach with some other businessmen.
Just Afghanistan, or
no? We're going to Kazakhstan, Turkmenistan, India, Turkey, those countries where we teach entrepreneurship and an introduction to business. And these are for college kids or university students that are interested. They're trying to determine, what am I going to do when I graduate, or is this the right direction that I need to go? And so you kind of sit with them and just kind of walk through that process, and you help identify what your strengths are, and then you could say, if you're interested in having your own business, then here's some steps you need to go through. And if you're interested in being part of a business, here's how you can help that business achieve success. And the same in entrepreneurship. There's so many opportunities out there that if you can point them out to them, there's opportunities to create that. So I'm still involved in that.
Cliff, you're so soft spoken, and you tell these stories. You tell the string of stories. I was in Afghanistan, and then there was a revolution in Iraq, but we decided to stay. Whoa, that's really that's a lot. And so, in terms of the experience you gathered, I mean, this is stuff that you were just living with your dad. And your parents, right? But your dad was the one getting the jobs at all these places, I presume.
Yes.
And so this was incorporated into your upbringing.
Yes.
Of not just traveling around. I mean, going to Europe is traveling around. Going to South America is traveling around. You're going to the hot spots. So I went to Cuba after the Cuban Revolution, and they shot up my roof because we're a bunch of capitalist scum. I don't know why they shot up your roof. I presume that was something to do with the reason.
I don't either. It was just like they were testing their weapons or whatever. But it was. Yeah. Even so, it was traumatizing to my mom. So yeah.
I believe it. So taking that all in as a package, and then you're still doing stuff like this today. How does that translate to being a congressman?
Wow, I think it gives me the ability. I appreciate those cultures that I lived in, and the diversity, and that gives me an opportunity to be able to work among different people's groups. Mm-hmm. I just I enjoy them, and so that's the transition. And in the greater Seattle area, what a diverse ethnicity across that District 7, and I think that I have the experience to be able to relate to those different peoples.
Mm-hmm. That's I mean, it almost sounds like you should be asking to be a diplomat or a consulate or something like that. Okay, so you're an entrepreneur. At some point, obviously, you're back here in Washington.
Yes.
When did you come back? I don't even know if you came back to Washington. How did you get to Washington? And then what do you do here now?
Well, in high school, I built this two-man submarine. It was something that you rode on. It was not self-contained, and I decided that I'd like to get a degree in oceanography.
Okay.
And in 1962, the only school that offered oceanography at the undergraduate level was the University of Washington.
Okay.
Other schools had programs, but they were all graduate programs, and I was too anxious to wait for that for graduate school. So I came here in 1962 to get a degree in oceanography, and I did. I got a degree in physical oceanography, which is the wave, currents and wave action on beaches and that kind of thing. And then because of my interest in wave action on beaches, I got a scholarship or a grant to get a degree in civil engineering. So I got a degree in civil engineering. And then over the years, because of teaching entrepreneurship in some of these countries, I was given an honorary doctorate in business and economics. So, and then while I was in graduate school, I would help people with their remodeling projects, typically like a bathroom or a kitchen or something like that. And then I was asked to do some work for people I didn't know, and I thought, you know what, I should probably get a license. So in 1972, I got a license for a construction company, Moon Construction Company. Initially, it was proprietorship, incorporated in 1975. I brought in a man that was 20 years my senior that had no experience in the construction trades, but whenever we had a problem, and I would go to him and we'd sit down and I would start from ground zero and explain to it, and he could pick out the issues that would solve the problem. So here we are 50 years later, and nearly all of our work is in the commercial clients.
So the company's still around?
Still around, yeah. And
still running.
Correct.
And then you're pretty commonly working on government contracts?
We do a lot of public work projects. Mm-hmm. We have a lot of renovations, both for the federal government, for cities, state. Yes, that's our, and we're able to. We're kind of a problem-solving type of a team, and so that we did a project for the city of Edmonds, for example, in which they needed a bridge built across their solid waste treatment plant, and we were the ones that stepped up and helped figure out how to do it, make it happen, and built this bridge for them. Yeah.
So want to talk about how that translates
Okay.
as well into being a congressman, because it sounds to me, if you've got obviously this pretty decent academic background and your ability to, sounds like, dip your toe into anything.
Yes.
Is that what I'm picking up
Yes.
here? And if you're doing these government contracts, I know that doing the job is one thing, doing the paperwork is another. Right? There's a bureaucratic labyrinth of craziness and decorum to go through. And I know, as any sort of legislative body, there's necessary decorum, but it kind of turns into shenanigans because people learn how the rules work and they figure out what rules they can leverage and that sort of thing. And do you feel that you would be able to navigate that sort of, I can't call it anything other than silliness and shenanigans, but I mean, it's a real thing that you have to be able to navigate inside a legislative body. Do you feel up to the task
I think
battling with that?
No, I think so. I think that because we deal with so many different people, that I have the ability to help to talk with other people and help. How can we solve this problem and look for a solution? And I mean, that's it's just a gift that I have, and I think I can work within that. And we have, every project has a contract, and nearly every project has something that comes up that's either not in the drawings or the client wants to add, and we can help facilitate that. I mean, my team, we're problem solvers, and we can say, here, we can do this, and we can save you some money on doing this, or we can do that, and it's kind of a minimal cost. And so, I think that'll work. That'll work in the House. Yeah.
So let's walk our way back to issues.
Okay.
So obviously, U.S. District 7, your primary job, as you mentioned it, is to represent the people in District 7 in Washington State. What would you bring to the table to the voters of District 7 that the current incumbent isn't?
I think I would bring a listening ear.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the things I want to be able to do. I want to be able to get people's feedback or tell me where they see things that I might not see, and then be able to work with those same people to see if we can't put something together, a solution that we can do from the congressional level.
Because when I looked at the primary numbers,
okay,
and obviously this is a deep blue area.
Correct.
Right, and you're running on the Republican ticket, and even though you smashed the Republican side of the ticket, you are still in a deep blue area. And I think you made a very good point of saying, you've spent your whole life working with cultures from all over the world, literally working, not just like, hey, I went traveling and I shook hands with you were like where they were getting shot at and staying and building dams and stuff, right?
Yep. So
what are you able to specifically give me any indication what the incumbent, and what's his name again? It's
Jayapal.
Jayapal. Where's Jayapal falling short?
Well,
that you want to. I'm asking the same question again, different. I'm just trying to get more information out of you.
That's fine. I think that she's had some town halls in which she's asked for responses, and I seem to be blocked from that. It's just she has this legislation that was just passed, this inflation reduction thing is. If you read that, I'm surprised that she could vote for that, because that doesn't benefit the district at all. And I think that you need to be able, before you vote on something, read it and see first, does it help my district or not? And before that, district has got to be first, and then the nation second. Because I'm a business owner, I've experienced inflationary costs. Fuel is probably the key factor.
Mm-hmm.
I think groceries are second.
I'd put labor on there as well.
Yep. Labor as well. The we have a great team. But you're right. The mandate. One of the things that I did was, since I've been married 56 years, and my wife and I have been with a health insurance group for over 50 years. So Kaiser came out with a research program for the COVID-19 vaccine.
Mm-hmm.
I volunteered to be one of the test cases.
Wow. I would not have done that.
And the reason was, I felt, one, they had 50 years of medical history on me, and that would be a benefit for their research. And if I could help other people through this by being a volunteer for the vaccine, that's just my gift to you.
Mm-hmm.
But on the same token, I'd say you should have the choice whether you take the vaccine or not be mandated.
Mm-hmm.
But that's an example of where I want to hear what's happening within the district. Tell me where your hurts are. Tell me if you see a pothole. I'm probably not the one to tell you where the pothole is, but I hear you.
Mm-hmm.
Let's fix these things. And we've got the crime that we have. That's the homelessness. There's got to be a solution that doesn't just
give them free drugs.
Give them free drugs. Exactly. What you're doing, you give them room and board and then cash to buy drugs. I mean, that's not going to solve the problem.
Mm-hmm.
We need to figure out what the root cause is, or I think we know what it is, but we need to address it. We need to fix it, and the reduction in police force, that's crazy. That's crazy. I don't want a police state, but at the same token, I want to be able to walk down the street and without being accosted. I want to see parents to take their children to parks without fear.
Stepping on a needle
Yeah, and we don't have that. And I think we can, a lot of that stuff has to be solved at a local level, but at the congressional level, I think we can put some pressure on the local politicians to get this thing fixed. And I want to do that.
Well, interesting that you brought that up. I interviewed Matt Larkin a couple months ago. He's running District 8.
Yes.
I think it's District 8. And he brought up a similar situation about the crime, because apparently now in Washington State, I'm sure you may or may not have heard of this, is that if a cop pulls behind you and you run away, they can't chase you.
Yep.
It's bizarre. And I asked him, I'm like, well, that's a Washington problem. What are you going to do about it in Washington, D.C.? And he said, well, we control the funding.
That's right.
Right? Which, personally, I don't think that's a great way for the whole system to be set up. But if we're going to use it for something good, then we and it's being used anyway, it might as well be used for that.
Right. That's an economic club.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's probably other clubs. I think I think that.
And by club, you mean club on the head, not club. Like, we're all members of the club. Yes.
No. Yeah. And so that you're using economics to control something, and there needs to be other solutions besides that. There's, if you passed a law, let's enforce that law. Maybe we need the feds to come in some way to help enforce that, or to say to the policymakers in District 7 that here's some things that we could do to help you to enforce the laws that you're having trouble enforcing, and actually do that.
Mm-hmm. What do you have to say to the constituents in District 7 who obviously up until now have been voting blue as ever, and they just there's just a large portion of people, they're going to vote red or they're going to vote blue no matter what the person is saying.
Yeah.
And we've got this unique opportunity right now that a lot of people are more angry at the blue side than normal. Is there any message that you would have toward the constituency to say, look, I understand I'm not in the party that you typically vote for, but here's why I think you should consider me?
Well, I direct you to my website. There's some statements that I have on there that show you what my morals are. And I'm not a politician. I've been a businessman for 50 years, and I have to make decisions on a daily basis. I have decisions on materials. I have decisions on labor distribution, but do it fairly. And I think that it's troubling that you get somebody in office that wants to build themselves up as opposed to building up the constituency. And that's what I want to do. I want to be able to help. If you have a problem, I want to hear about it. I want to see, can I help you? And if I can't, can I direct you to someone that can help you? That would be helpful for you, and I would enjoy doing that. And I can do that, I think, from Congress.
What other issues are big for you? Tell me about taxes.
Taxes are out of sight. It's
out of sight, like they're too high, or
they're
out of
too
sight.
high.
Okay, yeah.
Too high. It troubles me that, well, you take interest rates, which are related to taxation. A year ago, 2 years ago, house interest rates were 2-3%. Then something happens in D.C., and all of a sudden the interest rate goes up to 6%. We need a solution to. That's not fair. I mean, you want to create housing for people, and then you hammer them because you've increased the interest rate.
Go for it.
I think that this recent legislation that was passed, in which
we raised all the taxes and we spent a bunch of money on nothing.
You're correct. You're right. You have that's.
The neoliberal
That's right.
Strategy of raise taxes really high and spend it on nothing. Give the people some crumbs.
I know it.
Yeah.
I know it. The electric vehicles. In this legislation, you get $4,000 for
or whatever
credit.
It was. Yeah.
Yeah, but the drawback is, one, they haven't selected which vehicles that applies to. Two, electric vehicles are typically out of reach for many of the people in District 7. It's not a benefit to them. Plus, you have to buy the vehicle before you get the credit.
Right.
It's backwards. It just we need a and then they put a tax on fossil fuels energy systems. Gee, they're going to turn around and you'll see it at the gas pump. You need it's a name. They use this name just to get this legislation through. It benefits. I don't see where it benefits District 7 at all.
I don't see where it benefits 99% of the population.
That's true. But
population here at all. But obviously, District 7 is the...
Yeah, that's my focus. District 7. Does it benefit you, yes or no? And if it doesn't, then I'm going to ask you how I should vote, So it needs to be District 7 first, nation second, global third.
What other issues are on your mind?
Well, the school curriculum troubles me as well. As a father, as a grandfather and great grandfather, I think that the schools are creating curriculums that leave the parents out. The parents know. I think the parents should know best with how to educate their child, and they need to be involved in that curriculums that are being taught in the school systems.
Who is the primary stakeholder in a child's upbringing? I mean, morally. If I asked you that in a vacuum, who should be the primary stakeholder in a child's upbringing? I'm going to tell you who it is legally.
The parents,
right?
Absolutely, the parents first.
So
that should be with schools. That should be in healthcare. The parents, they're first. They're the first line.
If you take a meander through the laws of Washington State, and I know we're talking federal and state here, but just to prove this point or elucidate this point, the state law very, very clearly says that the parents are not the primary stakeholder of a child's upbringing. It's the state and I think WASDA, which is the Washington State School Directors Association, something like that, association. And to your point, is that legally speaking, the parents are not, specifically, using specific corporate legal language that's written in the law, the primary stakeholders. And so when they show up to these school boards, the school boards are going, who are you?
Yeah.
Right? And so putting that on the table and sliding over to you, if you're in Washington, D.C., would you support, say, a congressional resolution that says we recognize parents as the primary stakeholders in the children's upbringing?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think you'll see that federal legislation trumps state legislation. And so, no, you're right. We need the parents, parental rights, school, healthcare,
all of it.
Thing. All of that.
All of it. Am I talking to you too much? Or are you?
No. Oh, it's good coffee.
What? I can start throwing stuff out there, but what other issues are big on your mind?
Those are really the key issues. Oh, I'll say that the climate issue troubles me in the sense that I have when I was in oceanography, we had to take classes in meteorology. Mm-hmm. In the greater Seattle area, winds come from the southwest. That's our primary source of air, and it just blows across the Puget Sound area. Mm-hmm. I don't see how everybody having an electric vehicle is going to change the climate within that zone. And the other, when I was in some of my early days, I worked for a company in which they had an environmental group, and we wrote environmental impact statements. Mm-hmm. So I'm familiar with that process of how you evaluate the environment and how it impacts people and how people impact the environment. And I think that I can bring that to the table as well because of that experience.
What about the border?
That's a good thing. I mean, border needs to be closed. If one person crosses the border illegally, it's an open border, and we're having hundreds and thousands crossing. We need to close the border. I think that people that want to immigrate into the U.S. need to come through a legal portal. Mm-hmm. And the ones that come across illegally and get dispersed into the across the nation, they're being taken advantage of. They're the ones that you see as nannies or dishwashers or cooks maybe or landscapers and they're taken advantage of. So if something happens to them, they have no legal status. Mm-hmm. They don't have you can get emergency health care, but you don't have the system that we have to help people. They're outside of that, and unless we close the borders and make people go through a legal portal, I think that we have to do that. Mm-hmm. Close the border in a fashion. We have a closed border between us and Canada. Why not do the same thing down along the south?
I'm sure you and I could sit here and think of one conspiracy theory after another why that might be the case.
Yes.
What about election integrity? How do you feel I mean, obviously each state is its own animal.
Yeah.
But how do you feel about the current election system?
I think that there was probably, I'm sure that there was some irregularity in the last election. I think that people want integrity in the election system. They want to know that their vote counts, and that that they have the opportunity to express themselves through that voting system.
Mm-hmm.
I remember the days when we had our districts that we would go to, and we had to sign in, show our ID, and then we would vote.
Mm-hmm.
So that, to me, that ensured some integrity.
Well, and I'm sure that's what you've noticed in all these. I don't know if you've watched voting in those other countries you've been to, but from what I understand, in any third world country, that's how they do it.
Yep, yep, that's true. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
so that's, in Afghanistan, for example, when you voted, you got a purple dye put on your fingers that showed that you voted.
So you couldn't walk back in.
You couldn't walk back in and do it a second time.
Type
thing. So no, we need integrity, and how we achieve that integrity, I'd be happy to be part of that solution to make sure that it's honesty above board, and yeah.
Great. Well, Cliff, if you don't have any other big pressing issue on your mind,
I don't.
I think we can wrap it up.
Super. Thanks.
Awesome.
Dylan.
Well, I appreciate you coming on. It's exciting that, like you said, you threw your hat in the ring 24 hours before you couldn't do it anymore, and then you beat the other Republicans pretty badly.
Yes.
I don't remember the numbers off the top of my head, but it was pretty significant. So it's exciting to have you here.
Thank you.
I hope for the best for the election, and if you're in Congress, I'm going to be giving you a call and talk about
super
that. Remember that primary stakeholder resolution I talked about? Let's
look at that.
Let's look at that. Awesome.
I want to hear.
Awesome.
I'm willing to listen.
Perfect. Okay. Well, this has been Dylan Moore with IridaTV. I've got Cliff Moon. Oh, wait. Before we go off, your website. Tell us your website.
Website, Cliff4Congress.com.
Cliff4Congress.com. Go there. He didn't even ask for money in the show. You can go there to donate. Anyway, so this has been Dylan Moore with IridaTV, and I've had Cliff Moon, who is a congressional candidate for District 7 in Washington State. And thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.